It's a difficult place for me. It's beautiful, but just personally, it's hard being back in Perth. I think everyone's acting in good faith trying to get an outcome.
Brittany Higgins has made her first public appearance in Australia since moving to France last year with her boyfriend, David Shiraz. But it was far from a happy homecoming. Higgins is in Perth to attend the WA Supreme Court for the first day of mediation with outgoing WA Senator Linda Reynolds, who's suing Higgins and Shiraz for defamation. Joining me now with the latest update is Legal Affairs Editor Tim Clark. Tim, how did Higgins seem as she came into court this morning?
Pretty well put together, like she always is. Beautifully dressed in a. I'm assured it was a cornflower blue, long-sleeved woolen dress from a British designer. But she didn't have much to say other than it was quite difficult being back in Perth, which was also obviously a sort of a reference to the weeks after the alleged attack on her in 2019. We know that after that, it was the federal election in 2019 was looming, and obviously Senator Reynolds was very keen to have all her staff on the ground in Western Australia. So that is where Ms Higgins ended up. And since then, in other testimony, in other trials, she's expanded on that and said she felt isolated, she felt suicidal, in fact, she said, because she was away from home, she was away from Canberra, and obviously she was also dealing with the fallout of what she said had happened to her in Parliament House just a few weeks later. So, as you said, Ben, not a very happy homecoming in several respects, including the fact that she's embroiled in a major defamation case, which could see her have to sit through another trial later this year. And if at the end of it she was to lose, then she could be looking at some serious damages being awarded against her.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this case because there obviously has been a number of trials and courtroom proceedings involving Brittany Higgins, Linda Reynolds over the past couple of years, and it might be hard for some listeners to keep track of it all. So what is this defamation suit that Linda Reynolds has brought?
Yeah, so this is Senator Reynolds, or the outgoing Senator Reynolds, suing Miss Higgins and her fiancé David Shiraz personally for posts that they placed on their social media channels in the eye of that firestorm, following the allegations and following the interview on the network, on Network 10, the project, and then after the criminal trial involving Bruce Lerman that we know ultimately fell over and was discontinued. So Senator Reynolds alleges that these posts and comments made on them defamed her in that they accused her of being a bully, basically, and other things. And she also claims that they breached a settlement deed that had been reached, which basically said that Brittany Higgins and anyone connected with her were not allowed to post personally about Ms Reynolds. So these allegations were lodged in the WA Supreme Court last year. They've rumbled on since then. There's been numerous sort of pre-trial hearings in which Justice Marcus Solomon, who's taken charge of the case, has urged all sides at all costs to try and settle before they get to trial. And today and tomorrow is the key dates in that possible settlement, because Justice Solomon has ordered face-to-face, in-person mediation between Ms Higgins, Mr Shiraz and Ms Reynolds and all their lawyers. So they basically all get in a room on the 8th floor here at the David Malcolm Justice Centre and try to thrash out a possible settlement. So that's what we're doing here. That's what they are doing here. And Justice Solomon said that mediation had to be in person, which is why Ms Higgins and Mr Shiraz have flown in from France to be here in person.
And Linda Reynolds, of course, is no stranger to this type of mediation. We've just seen it unfold over in the ACT. She sued the ACT government and former Director of Public Prosecutions, Shane Drumgold, over a letter he penned to the Australian Federal Police after the Lerman rape trial. And yesterday, the ACT government revealed it had paid Senator Reynolds $90,000 and issued an apology. What sort of financial penalty does Higgins and Shiraz face here?
More than that, I would suggest, if it was to go to trial. So there was some pre-trial argument that the case could or should be moved to Canberra. That was made by the Higgins and Shiraz parties because they said that most of the main players in the case were based there. Ms Reynolds' lawyers, for their part, said no, it should stay in Western Australia because that is where Ms Reynolds was based, where she was a senator, and where her reputation was at its highest, I suppose, given that the public service that she's given to the state through her political work for many, many years. She won that little fight before the trial, or the case was to get to trial. So that's why we're here. And she will allege that her reputation was severely damaged by these posts because they were serious allegations against a reputation that was previously sort of unblemished. So, yeah, I mean, you'd be looking at six figures, I would suggest, that she would be asking for, plus the inevitable legal costs on top of that. So it's no small potatoes when you go to a defamation case at this level, which is why a Supreme Court judge has been given carriage of it. And interestingly, this morning we found out, Ben, that Justice Solomon has actually chosen or made aware that he wants to be personally involved in that mediation. So usually they're done before a registrar of the Supreme Court, and my understanding was it was to be one of the most senior registrars, Danielle Davis, who's very experienced in these cases. But Justice Solomon has said, no, I want to be in the room too. So all efforts can be made to try and bring this to a close before the trial commences. So that was an interesting development, because not only does it mean that there's a judge trying to sort it out, it also means that if it does go to trial, Justice Solomon won't be able to sit on that trial, given that he's sit in to the or with the mediation this morning. So look, all stops are being pulled out, certainly on the court's side, to try and get it settled. But at the end of the day, it's up to Senator Reynolds, because it's her action, and she will decide whether if they do come to some sort of arrangement, whether she's happy with it or whether she wants to go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be fascinating to watch the next couple of days as this all plays out behind closed doors. Legal Affairs editor Tim Clark, thanks for bringing us this update.